Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. On behalf of Smart Cities Council, thanks for being here today. We're going to have a really great and informative webinar brought to you today by the Smart Cities Council in partnership with Global Affairs Canada. Going to have a good conversation today, showcasing the innovation of Canadian tech companies and cities. I am your host for today's session. I'm Albie Bocanegra, futurist in residence for Smart Cities Council, formerly CTO for the City of New York, and formerly Global Vice President for City and Tech Partnerships at MasterCard. I've had a front row seat to Canadian innovation, so I'm excited to be a part of this call today. And as many of you know, Canada has been gaining a reputation as a hotbed for innovation in the technology sector and across multiple different verticals. You've got cities like Hamilton leading the way, Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, all of which I've had the pleasure of working with, and they're all in my opinion, at the forefront of the tech movement, the civic tech movement. I know that Canadian tech companies have also been making waves on the global stage, providing cutting edge products and services and solving cities' most pressing issues, but also issues for the private sector. And so in this webinar, we're going to explore some of those trends, and we're going to explore some of the advances in Canadian tech, specifically like some of the companies that we're going to showcase today. And then we're also going to highlight some unique opportunities and challenges that cities are having, brought to you by Hamilton's own Cyrus Tehrani. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, ensure that you are engaged, taking notes, and ready to ask questions at the end. But before we get started with that, I do want to invite Global Affairs Canada and Trade Commissioner Dakota Korth. But first and foremost, I want to thank you, Dakota, for your partnership and recognizing the importance between partnering between government and industry so we could move technology for residents and people forward. And so thanks for that. And so I just want to hand it over to you for a couple of minutes to bring us in.
Thanks, Albie. Can everybody hear me all right? Can I get a thumbs up? All right, perfect. I really appreciate that, and a really hearty welcome to everyone else who's joining us from, looks like quite a smattering around the world, not just North America. So welcome, whatever time it is where you are. As Albie said, my name is Dakota Korth. I'm a trade commissioner with Global Affairs Canada, working out of the consulate in Detroit, Michigan, in the US, with a fine view directly across the river into Ontario. The TCS, the Trade Commissioner's Service, helps businesses everywhere grow through our network of commissioners, where we're represented in over 160 cities worldwide and across Canada. Our role really is connecting Canadian companies with international opportunities, and we work to assist businesses really around the globe in finding new products, new ideas, suppliers, partners, and new opportunities for growth. To support this, we have 15 ratified free trade agreements with over 50 countries, supporting over $1 trillion in two-way merchandise trade, and over $230 billion in two-way services trade. So the message for me and for the Trade Commission is pretty clear. When we succeed, we succeed when each of you succeed, whether you're a Canadian company, whether you're a municipality or a company in any other country in the world, as long as we're working in partnership, as Albie noted. And that's why we're supporting this webinar series, to highlight some of the best applications and advancements in smart cities technologies, and to hear directly from people who've implemented them. Prior to joining the Canadian government, I actually worked in economic development for Wayne County, which is the largest county in Michigan. It's where Detroit is located. And that's where I really got firsthand experience of how incredibly difficult it can be for municipal decision makers and innovative solution providers to effectively find each other at the right time, precisely what Albie was getting at. I often make the joke, and I'm sure Connie's a little tired of hearing it, but that for particularly a small and medium-sized company, to find a municipal leader who's ready for their new technology at a time when they actually have funding, when they have the authority to spend that funding, when they have buy-in from their leadership, and when they have the right mindset and team for taking risks and implementing advanced solutions, it's like trying to find a needle in a warehouse full of haystacks. I envision this series, along with activities we're working to develop, and hopefully in partnership with many of you in coming months, to help solve some of that challenge by helping increase awareness and directly connecting each of you with some of the untapped potential out there. So with that said, I really want to thank today's speakers, Cyrus, Sharuk, Hugh, Neil. Thank you guys for your time and your valuable insights today. We really do all stand to learn from your experiences, so thank you. And I really want to thank Connie Heath with Smart Cities Council for her heavy, heavy lift and efforts in bringing this about. So thanks, Connie. And with that, really, many thanks to you, Albie, for agreeing to steer the ship, not just today, but over the following two. And let me hand it back to you and to this great panel. Thank you all.
Awesome. Thanks, Dakota. I'll do my best to keep us on time, on track, and focused. And then just so that being said, as Dakota said, I do want to welcome all of our presenters today. So just going to do a brief intro of who they are and what their role is. So kicking us off is going to be Cyrus Tehrani, who's the Chief Digital Officer and Director of Innovation for the City of Hamilton. We have Sharuk Ali, who is the CEO and founder of ESI, Ecosystems Informatics, Inc. Hugh O'Reilly, the Executive Director of Innovative Cities, and Neil Jardin, who is the Global Cyber Risk Intelligence and Claims Director for Box Insurance. So kicking us off, we're going to have Cyrus sharing a little bit about what the great city of Hamilton is doing for their residents, leveraging technology and partnerships. So over to you, Cyrus.
Thanks, Albie. I appreciate it. And a great opportunity to highlight some of the work that's happening in the Canadian Smart Cities ecosystem here with some of the presenters we have today. Just for some background, I am the Chief Digital Officer here for the city. It's a bit of a weird role in terms of I have Smart Cities, I have our open data program, I have some work that we do around our corporate partnerships, and really trying to evolve how we meet the needs of the city through various innovation partnerships and pilot type projects. I will say that I think, for context, we're about 45 minutes west of Toronto, about 60 minutes northwest of Buffalo. Within 60 minutes, we have over 4 million people within a 60-minute drive, and we have Hamilton itself is a goods movement sector where we have both the international airport, one of the busiest ports in the Great Lakes, and we have a large industrial base as well that supports a fairly diversified economy that includes healthcare, education, and advanced manufacturing. We're, I would say, early in our smart cities journey in terms of learning how to find that fit. And I think Dakota mentioned it really well. It's finding where those niches are, where there's internal demand, where the problems that you're trying to solve, and matching up with potential solution providers. And often it's about getting your feet wet, trying something, seeing if it works, and then building on that success. I also chair the Canadian Smart Cities working group, where we're a group of practitioners from all over Canada. We come together on a quarterly basis just to exchange information and talk about some of the projects that we're working on, because it's, cities don't necessarily compete, and it's great to be able to go and knock on somebody's door and talk to them. I'm not going to get into the details of some of the projects we've done. I think it's more of interest to hear what's happening with the companies that are here present today. I'll briefly comment before we go over to Sharuk. We've done 2 projects with ESI, and I think they're fairly unique. So as part of one of our awards, we conducted a complete streets review, and that was looking at street safety, street design. And as part of that, we went a little bit further, and Sharuk will speak to it a little bit more, but they basically have a mobile environmental monitoring technology. And so for us, that allowed us to get real-time data around air quality right at the street level over a series of measurements and series of time periods to really help inform, not just as part of like street design and environmental consideration, but what was actually happening at the city. And that was some great visualization and data that we got that helped inform future state plans around what we were doing specifically in that ward. Based on that project, we also have a project where we have a unique situation where our port, the fastest route to one of our major artery highways, is actually through our downtown core. That obviously creates both Vision Zero, traffic congestion, GHG emissions. So we've are switching what we call our master truck route to alternate routes that will minimize traffic through neighborhoods and our downtown core. And as part of that work, we have a network of IoT sensors that we've deployed that are going to be measuring sound along the route before and after. And as well, we've engaged with ESI to do monitoring for a current state assessment along the existing track route, and then future state assessments to try to identify if we're seeing significant impacts from an environmental perspective along the route between the previous route once the trucks change to the new route direction. We're excited to see the outcome. We've seen some of the initial work. We've completed the initial work on the baselining and looking to see the future state baselining once the truck route is rerouted, and we have some runway on that. So that's a few of the things. I won't bore everybody else with additional details, and I'll pass it back to you, Elby, to get to the meat and potatoes of this with the presenters.
Yeah, thanks so much, Cyrus. Well, look, I just want to recognize, I think that you, the city of Hamilton and your office particular has kind of cracked that nut on the partnership aspect of getting things accomplished. I think that, I don't say it enough that the only way to move cities forward is together. And by together, I mean everyone at the table, right? Industry, academic partners, NGOs, civil society members. And I think that, when I see cities that have done that well, it shows, right? And shows, and it doesn't just show by talking points, it's in results. And so I just want to recognize your work and the city of Hamilton for, getting that done the right way and kind of creating what I would consider the gold standard for partnership. So thanks for sharing that, Cyrus. And I'm going to hand it over to Sharoop to tell us a little bit about the great work that ESI is doing.
Thank you, Albie and Cyrus, for that introduction. I'd have to say that advancing cities really needs the collaboration that you've mentioned, but also the champions that lead those collaborations. I'm sharing my screen. I wonder if you could confirm. Do you see it?
Yes, we see it.
Okay, wonderful. So thank you for the opportunity. It's a pleasure to be here with the panel here. I'd like to talk a little bit about the power of data-driven decision-making and how that impacts moving forward for smart cities. With potentially 2.5 billion more people living in cities by the year 2050, based on what the United Nations reports tells us, this poses so much stress on cities and challenges today and even more so in the future. Sustainable development, reducing energy consumption, optimizing operational efficiencies, even moving cars and people in and within the city for efficient transportation, improving public safety with more people and more activities happening, and enhanced citizen engagement, keeping the cities relevant for young people to come and for people to find jobs and creation. So all of these are challenges, day-to-day challenges on cities that, if anything, just mean that the cities need to be even more engaged and connected and smarter. So data it's by no means a new concept that cities use, but how it's been used effectively today, it's in silos, looking at data, using it, but then what we need to do for smart cities is looking at integrating of several resources of data, collectively looking at how this data comes together. The same piece of data can be looked at so many ways in so many angles and collect so many different types of information. And what that happens is you layer information layers on top of each other, and what you get is insights that makes decision making a much more efficient and effective way to move forward with smart cities. And this is actually where ecosystem informatics came to be. What we are doing is filling in the critical need and the gap for environmental data that plays onto the granular level, street by street, real time, and the granular level that it can provide. And you can use that in so many different ways. I myself come from a very heavy industry track record, but I've decided to use my final golden years in my career to use that knowledge to be able to support informed decision making when it comes to our well-being, our future generations. With this, I'd like to go into the project that Cyrus was alluding for. We've worked with a number of cities in Canada, and we have some activities happening internationally in Europe and in Asia. But Hamilton is one of the first cities that we've worked with the appetite to become an engaged city, to become a healthy city. So I'll talk a little bit about under the hood what we have in terms of our technology. We have an end-to-end technology that starts with hardware units. These are very small and concise units. You can put them on a moving platform like city cars. You can put them on city vehicles. And we collect data as these units are driving around. The data we collect is transmitted to our databases wirelessly. And within there, I'd like to think that it's as cool as it's what's showing here. We have multiple AI algorithms that work on the data to calibrate it and provide insights. But all of that complexity is simplified to the user. All they need to worry about is looking at the data at a granular level, parts per billion level of accuracy through a web-based dashboard. And this is a snapshot for one of the scans that we're doing in Hamilton here, for example, from January 2022. And we have analytics. It's translated into information that is ready to be digested. So with the work with the city of Hamilton, we've had a couple of projects like Cyrus was mentioning. The blue traces here show you the scans that we've done with our units on vehicles at a street level, block by block. And we had, within the same unit, we had 5 sensors for air quality and greenhouse gases. These were sulfur dioxide, ozone, nitrogen dioxide, particulate matter, and carbon monoxide. But we have many more that we can offer. That was the first phase that when we looked at this over 6 months, we were able to identify hotspots, problematic areas within the downtown core of the city. And that information was discussed with the with the city. And the city is also working on a second phase where they're rerouting their trucks. And that initiative, to understand the impact of that, we are working with the city to benchmark the before activity and understand the return on investment in the after activity. So benchmarking before and benchmarking during and after really gives that understanding of how much did we do and how well did we do, and is there more areas of improvement. But the power really, I would like to circle back on the power of information and layering data. This is another city that when you look at, for example, having a street level and a layer of pollution information, a layer of dust information, a layer of meteorological factors, and then you can put all of that together and come up with insights that help in infrastructure planning, help in health and safety, help in transportations, and so on. So not to take too much of the time, working with the city of Hamilton to us as a small company was a very, very positive experience. The city has the right attitude in terms of wanting to do the right thing and wanting to have having the right champions like Cyrus in the city, and utilizing digitization and data to become smarter, doing things faster, more effectively. So with that, I'd like to stop and offer any questions if there is a bandwidth for that.
So Sharuk, just before we even get to questions, I mean, the platform looks amazing. I think it's having data, making data available is super important, but I think clean data and usable data is even more important because that's actionable and cities can do something with that. So I just want to recognize ESI for the great work they've done. The other thing that I want to recognize too is that you're using existing municipal assets to deploy your devices, right? It's not about putting more hardware out on new infrastructure and having to build new things. You're taking what already exists in cities and what existing municipal infrastructure and then deploying your devices that way, which I think is very smart and more sustainable than having to, put up new things. And so I think fantastic work on that front. And then just a housekeeping question for Connie. Are we taking questions after each session, or do we save those to the end?
Let's save them to the end so we can get everyone.
Cool. All right. Well, we're happy to field questions at the end, everyone. So hold on to those, and or feel free to drop them in the chat, and we'll kind of go through those at the end. So next up, I want to welcome Hugh O'Reilly, the Executive Director of Innovate Cities. So I just want to ensure it's Innovate Cities, not Innovative Cities. So Hugh, let's chat.
Thanks, Alvi, and thanks also to the Smart Cities Council and Global Affairs Canada for giving me the opportunity to make this presentation. Connie's kind enough to, she's going to put up the 2 slides that I want to speak to. But my presentation, the slide deck is much more extensive, but I want to really speak to 3 topics. One is I want to describe Innovate Cities. Second, I want to talk about our model for data sharing. And lastly, I want to talk about the lessons we've learned, or given that I grew up in Western Canada, what I might say when it comes to data sharing and the way it's approached is, if we're so smart, how come we're not rich? How come this just doesn't happen? And that's the context for the lessons. So let me begin by talking about what Innovate Cities is. We are a not-for-profit that was established by a number of scale-up venture companies. We were funded by FedDev Southern Ontario. That funding has come to an end. And a couple things to say about Canada, just to build on all these points a little bit. Canada is the 2nd most successful country in the world when it comes to startups. We have a great and rich environment for startups. Where Canada falls short is in scaling our startups. So our focus was on scaling startups. Initially, the focus was on smart buildings and high IQ buildings, and with a real focus on commercial real estate. COVID rather upended our original strategy. So we changed course, and we are now focused on what we call building innovation infrastructure, with a particular emphasis on a data trust or a data sharing platform. A couple other points to make as we work our way through what our model looks like. One is we take the issue of privacy and community involvement and earning the trust of the communities we operate in very seriously. So we, for example, are GDPR compliant. We have an independent chief privacy officer who is Ann Kabukian, who's actually the person who designed and came up with the concept of privacy by design. And we also, and this is an important element, we've also established a community advisory board that has people with privacy expertise, people with technology expertise, but most important, represents the community. And if you go on our website and see who the members of the committee are, you'll see it's diverse from every perspective. And we think it's really important that when we talk about data sharing or data trust, that it's really important to earn the respect of the communities we operate within. So let me just go over what are the unique features of our data trust. 1, I've talked about our commitment to privacy. 2, we're a not-for-profit, and our aspiration is to operate like a public utility, viewing data as something that's necessary to improve the lives of people who work, live, and play in cities, but also in order to facilitate providing data to the innovation world, so that they can put in place what they need to do from an innovation perspective. I think it's also important to note, and I've got nothing against big tech. I know that that's really in vogue these days, but the reality is right now, big tech collects a lot of data, and they have asserted property interests and proprietary rights over this data to a limited degree around advertising, those sorts of things. But I think as time progresses, we should expect that them acting in their corporate interest, they will start to control how data is used by innovators and by others. And that's why we need a counterbalance. That's why we need a not-for-profit like Innovate Cities. The way our data sharing platform operates is you cannot transmit personally identifiable information onto it. If it's a data set that purports not to contain PII or personally identifiable information, we confirm that through the use of an algorithm developed by private AI. If your data set does contain PII that's going to go onto our platform, you can either synthesize the data yourself, and we will validate that, or we use the services of an entity called Replica Analytics. And while it's never impossible to re-identify, the reality of the Replica Analytics software is, from a statistical point of view, there's a 99.6% probability against re-identifying the data. The other thing, as I've talked about our community advisory board, our commitment to privacy, the privacy technology we also use the technology of Sightline Innovations as our data sharing platform. And two things I want to say before I describe how the technology operates is, I think we bring the best of what Canada is to bear on these problems. One, we use Canadian technology, which is cutting edge in these areas. But the second thing is, and my background is I ran a pension plan, a major pension plan for a number of years. We also bring Canada's leadership around governance principles, hence the Community Advisory Board and privacy. Now, the way our technology operates, which again is different and interesting and unique, is we give data providers the control over who gets to see or use their data. So put another way, if, for example, the city of Hamilton was a participant in our data trust, and there's a bit of a rivalry between Toronto and Hamilton, and if the city of Toronto wanted to look at their data, Hamilton would say no. So we give complete control. The way you log into the system, users come onto the system, they want to see someone's data, the entity providing the data gets to decide. Second thing about our technology that is, again, I think, well, it's interesting if it's not unique, is it's compatible with any computer system. So it works on the basis of nodes. So we connect the technology of the data provider onto the data sharing platform. And on that basis, that's how the data is shared. We have the capability, using the strength of another Canadian innovator, ThinkOn. We have the ability to store data if the data provider wants us to store it, but there's no necessity to do that. Also, the way the system works is it's a zero copy system. And the way we've structured it from a contractual point of view is that data providers will have a right of action against data users if the data users misuse the data that's been provided. Last point I want to talk about in terms of our model is this. Where we're different is data trusts, to the extent they do exist, they're based upon specific neighborhoods, specific products, specific use cases. We're not operating that way. The way we will operate is that any data that a data provider wants to put onto our platform, they can put onto the platform, and we don't curate the data because markets decide what is interesting and what isn't interesting, what is or what isn't valuable. A story I like to tell in this regard is back when I was a corporate lawyer I'm old enough now to say the turn of the century, we were selling off assets of logistics companies because those were thought, in the age of free trade, those were thought to probably be buggy whip companies. Well, IoT comes along and it resuscitates the buggy whip, so to speak, and logistics companies have enhanced in value. So that's why we think we don't want to curate the data. We want to let the market decide. Last point is the mechanism we use by acting as an honest broker, by being GDPR compliant, by respecting privacy, is we give data providers the ability to realize on the financial value of their data. And in times like this, with municipalities and with others, everyone trying to seek out different and new forms of revenue, this we think might be something that's unique from a value proposition that we offer. Last point, I'm hoping I'm not using up any Neil's time or anybody else's, and we're talking too fast. Those are always the dilemmas. So slide 14 now, Connie. I want to talk about the lessons we've learned. So the first lesson we learned was, as we started to move into this area, and there's a ton of stuff written on data trust. Indeed, we've even written a paper, but I was expecting we would come across someone who was doing this, doing it well, those sorts of things. Well, the reality is there's very little in the way of data trusts that are currently out there operating successfully beyond a specific corporate or some purpose functions. So that was a lesson we learned. We responded to that lesson by deciding to take a bold decision to go out and build a data trust. The theory being not exactly a field of dreams, but the theory being that if we said we're doing this, planted a flag, we'd get feedback around our specific concepts, and we did, and that helped us to get stronger and better. However, we've had trouble in terms of signing people up to participate in the data trust. Part of that is the typical cycle that innovation companies face, where you need to develop your market, you need your credible first users, you need to get your wall of logos. So we're engaged in that process as we speak now. But more important is, just like when it came to, there's a lot of theory about data trust. There's a ton written about data sharing and the need to do it and why it's important. The reality is very few people do it. It's not like organizations sit there and have a specific data sharing team or those sorts of things. So from a practical point of view, this is difficult. We have to overcome the hurdle of not only the early adopters and developing the wall of logos, but also making this something that's doable, something that becomes part of how modern economies and modern infrastructure perform. And that we try to do that by not only the technology we've developed, but engaging in these speaking seminars, doing more writing and promoting the concept itself. So and that's why, just to circle back to the original parts of the model, that's why we think it's important to give data providers control over the data that they provide and how it's used. So I will be happy when the time comes to answer any questions. Really appreciate this opportunity. Looking forward to a dialogue both through this webinar, but also potentially in questions you may have to ask. And just want to thank Smart City Council, Albie, Connie, and Dakota again. And Global Affairs Canada. I make sure I got your logo in, Dakota.
Thanks so much. Look, you're using all of my favorite words. Honest broker is probably, to me, one of the most important elements of a good governance model for data. So as you know, I didn't share this, but I'm a co-founder of the Cities Coalition for Digital Rights. We created a large coalition of global cities that were protecting the digital rights of residents. And the most important thing that we did was we created an honest broker model with UN Habitat. So having that third party as part of our governance models to ensure that the standards and frameworks that we create transcend administrations was super important and critical to keep that work going. So I applaud you for the work you're doing, I'm sorry. Cities should definitely, and organizations broadly should take advantage of your platform, of your knowledge and the work you're doing, because in order for us to properly use data and properly be the stewards of data, we have to bring in an honest broker to ensure that we do that the right way. So kudos to you, Hugh, and the great work you're doing at Innovative Cities. So with that, we're gonna hand it over to Neil Jardin from Box Insurance to share the fantastic work that they're doing. Had the pleasure of having Neil yesterday at our Smart Cities Council conference here in DC, and I'm a bigger fan by the day. So over to you, Neil.
Don't worry, Hugh. I get nervous and I talk fast, so I will make up for any long bits you had. So always nice there. But anyway, so want to give you a bit of an overview of who Box is. I do have some slides that I find better when I'm just talking, and I can share slides with folks later if they're interested. I always encourage people to reach out, whether you have a question about our product or just cybersecurity in general. mostly because my role is very much about informing people and helping them stay cyber secure. Fortunately, I'm not in the sales group, so I'm more, I just get to enjoy talking about cyber and what we do. So Box Insurance is a cyber insurer located in Canada and operations in the US. We target small to medium-sized businesses and kind of your medium-sized municipalities. So, under 150,000 and such, right under 100,000 municipalities. We understand that they have the same threat risks and the same attack vectors as a lot of larger municipalities, but they lack a lot of the resources. The joke I always make is nobody does a ribbon cutting ceremony in an email server room. It's always at a park or something. It's hard to run on the platform that we're going to update cybersecurity and we're going to stop building parks and stadiums. I haven't seen anyone run on that platform yet. So that's fortunately, it gives me a role, gives me a job because, we're here to protect municipalities and such. So a bit about myself, I've been doing nothing but data breaches since 2016. I've seen the gambit, everything from large pharmaceuticals to, municipalities losing all of their COVID records and having to notify all their constituents, to, 5 guys in a plumbing shop who can't figure out where they're supposed to go that day because their computers are encrypted. So I've seen the gambit, and what I've constantly seen is that we all talk about the big breaches, the big kind of sexy ones we all like to talk about, but what we miss is 90% of our economy, which is small to medium-sized businesses and small to medium-sized municipalities and those who don't have the same robust budget. So what we've gone ahead and done is we've really designed products and features for that group. So we've done is said, okay, if larger groups of companies and stuff, they have CISOs or chief information security officers. We've built out a virtual chief information security officer that can work based on the number of hours that the client or municipality in this case needs in order to provide them with the protections. So really it's about building something that's fit for purpose. And then we brought in CISOs who used to work at municipalities in order to help us augment that because they understand how things work and basically the dynamic of what needs to happen in order to get things done. So with that, maybe what I'll do is I'll throw a couple slides up on the screen here. I'm gonna see if I can do this easily. There we go, perfect. So there we go, is that showing? I think it is, fantastic. So a bit about our model, right, is I'm gonna try to whip through this because I know we just got time. So it's about predicting, preventing, and responding to attacks for municipalities, right? So municipalities are sitting there doing their everyday job. They don't want to sit there reading about the latest attack vectors, understanding what cyber criminals are doing. They want to focus on keeping the municipality running, especially if they don't have a dedicated IT team. So that's where we come in and we offer the service of, we will sit in the background, we'll monitor the dark web for you, we'll monitor hacker chatter, we'll see about what the latest vulnerabilities are. In this case, Apple just released one. We'll send out actionable intelligence to you. So this is how your network's set up. This is what you need to do in order to fix the holes and stop the breaches. And also we'll monitor and let you know when an attack is happening. So case in point, this morning we identified that one of our clients had actually had an attack ongoing at the moment. They just gotten access to the server. We sent them an email, gave them a phone call, and we're able to nip that in the butt and stop it before it spread and became bigger. So it's all about providing peace of mind in the background without being the front facer. I often will say we're the IT guy or the IT support for the IT guy, right? Sometimes municipalities will have the same person who's been doing IT for 20 years. They're really awesome at it, but it takes a lot of courses and a lot of updating in order to stay relevant with the latest attack vectors. So really it's about providing, attack surface management monitoring. So it's the dark web, it's external scanning, it's the hackbuster alerts when something's happened. It's also monitoring data. So if you know a lot about the social engineering attacks that's happening right now, if you were involved in a data breach in 2016, 17, or 18, the hackers right now are going back through that data and using that information to target social engineering events because there's a lot more hackers doing it and they're turning it into almost, it's a service now. You can actually buy phishing emails by the thousands for $30 and have them sent out and see who clicks and get stats on it. It's really kind of cool in a cryptic, weird way. So then it's about providing a response when something does happen. So we offer the municipalities when something happens, phone us anytime you want. We'll give you help. it's part of your package. It can sometimes be really, I consider, questions that are very simple to answer. So I think I have a privacy breach. We think we sent information. How do we justify or identify if it's a privacy breach? Or if it's just, does it fall under PII? Does it fall under PHI, right? So personal identifiable information, personal health information, and we just walk them through the process. And then part of that comes back to our virtual chief information security officer, which works on keeping them secure by providing tools and such. So a lot of ours is in-house tools that we built, which is our attack surface management, our dark web monitoring, and our hacker chatter and things like that. So it's basically tools in the background to help keep them secure. And then I'll go to this, which is how it works. So it's kind of a 3 different plan approach. Do you want just someone to phone when you have issues, or do you need a full on, we'll monitor your surface, we'll help you? So that's really about what we are. I kind of did that super fast because I don't think we're here to just look at slides. I think we're here to all chat about the digital world and how that affects cities and municipalities. But really, I'd encourage you to reach out if you have any questions or have any issues you'd like to discuss around cybersecurity. Or if you're a municipality who's going, how do I get all the features that, the larger municipalities, not to pick on Toronto, but the larger municipalities get while being a smaller municipality. That's what our expertise comes in. Let's give you all the controls the Fortune 500s have at a very small price point, because we do it in such a large scale that we can bring it back for you. So that's my spiel. If anyone has any questions on cybersecurity, give me a shout. I'm happy to chat. As you can tell, I really like what I do and I really enjoy cybersecurity. So I'm super chatty about it.
Awesome, Neil. Thank you. So look, can't overstate the importance of prediction and prevention of cyber attacks, and having, a partner at your side to be able to help you with that, especially when you're thinking about municipalities and large organizations that have a large workforce. So, the end user, many of us are pretty good at technology, and you've got CISOs, CTOs, CIOs that kind of understand what that looks like and what attack patterns look like. But then you've got your end user, which I think is usually where attacks happen, right? The person that behind the analyst, the receptionist, the budget person that's really not thinking about this from a holistic perspective. So having someone to help them kind of through it, usually like the triage, that very first wonky email that comes in, or that weird request that comes in, to be able to catch them, so they know that maybe with a couple of questions, having someone at their fingertips to be able to, hey, I got this weird email, analyze it for me, or hey, this text request came in, what do I do? This mobile request came in on my municipal cell phone, and what do I do? And so having just that first layer of triage to be able to identify any potential hacks, I think is going to make, I know makes a huge impact, because, I've been that young person just coming into the workforce. Shoot, I think I've even clicked on some of the test emails that our CISO used to send out, like, respond to this email right now, this budget request or whatever, because sometimes you are so in your mode getting your job done that, like you said, you're not really thinking about all of the things that could happen. And so really excited about the work you're doing. So that being said, I want to kind of kick us over to Q&A. I had a really cool question come in that I want to start off with, and it's both for Sharuk and for Cyrus. Is, partnering is hard. I talk about the importance of partnership like it's the easiest thing to do, but it's not. Specifically when you're a municipality and you're trying to partner with, an innovative industry solution. So what did that pathway to partnership look like for you all to get this accomplished? And I'll, Cyrus, you can kick off, for Sharuk, either way, but maybe getting your perspective from the need side, Cyrus.
Yeah, I think for us, it's kind of that magic bit, right? Like you have to identify, for me, especially, it's having an operational owner that has a problem that they need to solve, and they may not need to know exactly where to go. Like, City of Hamilton's 8,000 people, an employee base, we're 6 different divisions. Our public works group is 2,600 people. Often people are so head down in operational requirements that they don't have time to look up and look around. And that's where, working with innovative companies that are willing to test the waters. For example, everybody knows the procurement cycles for public sector are really challenging. You know, like you hit the nail on the head, Albie. It's right time, right place, go through the procurement cycle. It can take us 12 months to procure a technology. So being agile and being able to work on smaller projects that might work within our procurement thresholds, test the technology. We've also done opportunities where we've brought in it's been through a funding opportunity that we brought a partner into the city to help solve something, and that's resulted in additional business or new solutions. Sure, maybe I'll pass it over to you. You can comment on the experience because you work with multiple cities, both in Canada and in other jurisdictions, and you'll probably be the best to speak to how to make those relationships work, depending on the needs of the customer that you're working with.
Right. I mean, well said, Cyrus. If I wanted to add, it's a two-way street. The city has to have kind of the appetite to be open to doing things a little bit differently. And I think to doing things smart, that is the first thing, is to be open to doing things differently, because we want to do things more efficiently. For us as a small company, what worked with the city of Hamilton is that we were able to get into conversations with them, speak to the right people, really, not just on the administration side, but also on the technical side, to understand the pain points and adapt the way we deploy things. With every city, it's a different use case. It's the same data that we measure and monitor and provide analytics, but just how they use it and what do they use it for is different with every city. So having those conversations, providing that input, really helped us shape the projects in the best way that we can deliver and the best way that we could offer the city meaningful results.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, I think having a city that is willing to partner and is looking for the partnership and makes it happen, Cyrus, I'm sure that part is super complicated and not easy. So yeah, kudos for that. So thank you for sharing. I mean, I think it's super important to kind of describe what a pathway to partnership looks like, because there's no one size fits all. And so at least identifying what are some of the things that are working is key. Great. And so maybe I've got another question here for Neil at Box. And so Neil, I think what are some best practices that companies and municipalities can utilize to ensure they have a strong cyber posture from staff level down to, CISO level? Like some good hygiene, good cyber hygiene.
Yeah, I'd say training. Train everybody, make them aware of it, make them realize that, they're part of the cybersecurity ecosystem. There's a really funny cartoon that I have in most of my presentations, and it's like a boxing ring, and it shows a server and an email and firewall and everything in one corner. And then it's got a person named Dave in the other corner. And it's like, it doesn't matter what you have for cybersecurity. If you have one employee who just clicks on every link, downloads everything, and doesn't care, you're done for. So it's about making sure that everybody's involved in the conversation. And then it's also removing the stigma around being afraid to report stuff, right? So people will click a link and then they'll close the web browser super fast. Like, well, I don't want to report this because if I report it, I got to do extra training and my boss is going to come by and then his boss is going to come by and then I got to explain it, right? So instead if somebody comes to me and says to me, Neil, I clicked a link, I'm like, awesome, thank you. Perfect. I can go check it out. Awesome. Thank you very much for the help. Don't worry about it. So I actually encourage people to phone me, talk to me, email me, ask me. There is no dumb question. And so I think that's it. So it's about training and having an open dialogue and not making people feel like they're going to get in trouble if they click a link by accident, because then all they're going to do is hide it on you. And then next thing you know, you spend $500,000 doing an investigation for a ransomware claim just to find out that Ed in the back mail room clicked a link and he was afraid to tell you about it 6 months ago. So I think it's about training and bringing people together and making them happy and want to phone you, which is why we created the whole, CyberWalks Assist, phone us 24 hours a day. We're just going to help you. No questions dumb, because I think that needs to be our approach to cybersecurity.
Well, yeah. And I think you pointed out a really important aspect of it is like the cyber shaming, right? Is people have to feel like they're in a position to be able to ask what they would consider a silly question, or raise their hand if something has happened behind their device or their system and say, hey, I think I've been hacked, or I clicked on this link, right? Raise your hand. So I very much
Yeah.
believe in that open dialogue. Maybe a second part to the question is I firmly believe in picking up the carrot before you pick up the stick. But I think every now and then the stick is, merits a response. And so what kind of enforcement mechanisms should organizations really think about for people that are just not honoring the cyber, protocols?
Yeah, I think that needs to be looked at beyond just I'm clicking links and I'm not paying attention. Like that's an organizational issue. You're putting the organization at risk by having, information potentially be leaked or causing a ransomware event. So as harsh as it sounds, it's kind of, 3-strike rule, and then you're banned from using a device that's externally facing or something along those lines. I think there needs to be some steps to the process, but I don't want to start with, you're going to get in trouble if you do something. Let's start with this is why you can't do that. Why are you doing that? And then go from there and see if you can do it. But yeah, if you have someone who's just outright being against it, then go. I saw Dakota came off mute, so I'm sure he's got a comment. He's going to chime in here and let me know. But Dakota, do you have a thought on it?
I think it's great. Government of Canada is not a small and medium-sized enterprise, and yet we continuously have had severe IT problems over the course of, particularly during the pandemic, and we get barraged with similar to real-looking emails on a regular basis. And the only thing I would say is they're very good at following up with you about, hey, we sent this to you, congratulations, you didn't click on it, but you also didn't report it. And I think making that reporting mechanism very easy, because I have to remember some sort of 42-character email to type in to be able to do it versus just some sort of button is an issue. But I also think if there was the threat of we're going to take your laptop and give you a typewriter, then people might be more diligent about that as well.
Thanks for that.
No,
And
I think it's trendy to use antique stuff now, so you might get people going to the thing just to be trendy, But
yeah.
I think as well, it's cybersecurity is about interconnection of systems, right? So we're talking a lot about sensors and so on located throughout municipalities. You start bringing all those systems together, and now you've got to make sure that you maintain the security between them as well. So I think it's also talking to your partners and seeing how, when we bring all this together, how do we make sure that everything comes in, works properly together, and stays secure as it comes together.
Awesome. Exactly. So I think I saw a question in the Q&A, and I think this one's for you, Sharuk, is, you beat me to it. I think that you answered the question in the chat. Do you want to maybe address it though, while we're talking?
Yes, I can repeat that. The question was about urban planning and the use of data. And as a matter of fact, it's a very good question because it showcases how the same data could be looked at from multiple angles and reused for decision-making and different aspects. We've worked with a couple of cities on infrastructure planning, looking at how to do things, especially when you want to do things effectively and smartly. You need to understand how to do that with the tools that you have today, but understanding that these impacts are 10, 20 years down the road. So we've worked with using benchmarked real-time data and fed them into the statistical modeling tools to come up with scenario-based results. Those help the cities in infrastructure planning and making decisions, what to do with streets, what to do with speed limits, what to do with mobility in general, and even placing hospitals, placing schools, where are the best places for those. So we've done a number of these, and like I said, the same data can be used in so many different ways. I hope I answered.
I think you did, yeah. So I think we've got we got a lot of questions coming in. Let's see. Oh, this one should be good. I want you to take this one, Hugh. Is how do you see the emerging disrupting nature of AI tools such as ChatGPT or just any artificial intelligence tools impacting the effectiveness of data usage and integration? Any thoughts on that?
I think that AI and its increasing use has the real potential to create a lot of disruption in that space. And in particular, it's going to create a lot of challenges, and will create a lot of challenges in terms of a data sharing platform. But that's why I think it's important for, I noted one of the comments talked about having a cooperative model, which I think the not-for-profit can lead itself to. But I think there will be a lot of disruption from AI, and I think we're going to have to adjust and figure out how we're going to work with it.
Yeah. Well, on that note too, and I think this one, Cyrus, you can chime in on, Sharuk and Hugh, is just like we talked about cyber hygiene. I think data hygiene is super important to look at. You've got the deployment of sensors and thinking about like all the data you're collecting and what you're doing with it. What are some best practices or some things? Maybe give the honest broker recommendation, Hugh, the city, what you look for when you're deploying devices, and then Sharuk, how you kind of follow the municipal guidelines on that.
Just a couple points. One, the way our technology operates is it actually can help organizations internally reorganize their data, and it can enhance data sharing within those organizations. Because that's another issue within. I'm not trying to pick fights with anybody, but within government, within municipal government, people aren't necessarily good at sharing data, right? In the civil service world, the currency is knowledge, and people like to hang on to it. So we can help with those sorts of things. And then when it comes to data governance, I think before we get there, and I think building on the last point I made, it's a matter of having a data strategy. And once you have that data strategy, then I think the governance follows it, right? Because it's got to be strategy then structure. So
I love that. Yeah. And so here's where I'll call on Cyrus too, to kind of reinforce, what Hugh's saying, and then how some of those practices are employed there at Hamilton.
Yeah, we're actually, it's a great point. We struggle with data silos. We're like data rich, but maybe sometimes struggle to get to the information. And it's about building a culture around data and data literacy. So those are some of the areas that we're trying to expand, some of the usual suspects in terms of, really developing a robust enterprise data management plan, creating a data catalog internally. We don't have one currently, so people don't know where to go for the data. So one of the things that our IT group is working on is launching sort of a data catalog internally, which kind of aligns again to some of the work that Hugh and Innovate Cities is doing. And we also try to do things around, I don't want to talk about open data, but we've done a city dashboard. And again, it's not that unique, but we've taken some key metrics that we think are important to the public and our council and made those accessible through an external facing dashboard that's then tied to data. And I think when it comes working with companies about really understanding where's that ownership of the data, how is it going to be used, who retains the data, what to do in the event if there is data breaches in those protocols, and just making sure that we are good custodians of data, especially if it contains personal identifiable information or PHI. We have public health data that's segmented and siloed and things like that. But it's definitely an evolution of how do you make that data and the access to that data to make data-driven decisions for council. For example, we launched a homelessness dashboard, and that came out of a lot of people using different sets of metrics about how they were reporting things, because you have planning that's involved in houses. You have a kind of whole continuum around that, and just speaking a common language and making that data dictionary in common language and making it publicly available makes it a resource for people to refer to around access to data for public good.
Yeah, I love the idea of a data dictionary, and I wish you success on that journey, because I think it sets a standard and a precedent for by which partners can activate data and use it and clean it and make it a public use tool. Which brings me over back to Sharuk is, okay, so how does an industry player ensure that you're supporting the data standards of a city and their playbooks and what they're creating? And be a good partner to that.
So the general philosophy is that each customer only has access to their own data and their own insights. Our system is built that way. So some customers have requirements that the data needs to be within a specific jurisdiction. Our system also is built in that way. Our system provides real-time data, but it also stores the data for the period of the contract that we have with the customer. And so we are able to provide historical data for that same customer. So the system is built in such a way that the historical data has backing up on it and has the certain security levels on it, such that when it's retrieved by the customer to look at real time versus historical, all sorts of analytics could come out of that. Our system is built in that way, and we also accommodate specific requirements from the customers. And we see this more and more, especially international, that data needs to be hosted and processed locally to those locations. So that is very much understood on our side and respected.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're a great data partner to your cities and customers. Holy smokes, we are out of time. I feel like we could have gone at least another hour, but you know, everyone's super busy and have cities to run, organizations to create great products and services for honest brokers to ensure that we are doing the right thing by our residents, and you know, government trade commissions that ensure that that whole thing, the whole ecosystem works together, right? And that we're able to not just provide goods and services in our regions, but remember that this is the smart cities community is a global community. The cities conversation is a global conversation. The stuff we do locally impacts things that are happening nationally and globally. This is a global community. And so having organizations such as Global Affairs Canada and driving the conversation that are happening with cities, I think is super critical. And so, yeah, I mean, you know, again, thank you so much for everyone that participated. Cyrus, Hugh, Sharuk, Dakota. I know Neil had to jump off, but thanks to Neil and Box. And I'll, you know, I think, you know, stay in touch with us. Connie's putting up our information for Smart Cities Council. If you have any questions, you can email Connie, connie.heath@smartcitiescouncil. I dropped my information there if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn. Stay in touch. We've got 2 more of these to go, 2 more webinar dates, May 2nd and May 16th. Make sure that you're tuned into those. A lot of really great information is going to come in there. But today, I want to thank our participants. I want to thank our panelists. I want to thank Global Affairs Canada on behalf of Smart Cities Council. Yeah. Looking forward to the next one. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.